The Lord be with you.
And with your spirit.
A reading from the Holy Gospel according to Mark.
Glory to you, O Lord.
Again, Jesus left the district of Tyre and went by way of Sidon to the Sea of Galilee, into the district of the Decapolis. And people brought to him a deaf man who had a speech impediment and begged him to lay his hand on him. He took him off by himself away from the crowd. He put his finger into the man's ears and, spitting, touched his tongue. Then he looked up to heaven and groaned and said to him, "Ephphatha," that is, be opened. And immediately the man's ears were opened, his speech impediment was removed, and he spoke plainly. He ordered them not to tell anyone, but the more he ordered them not to, the more they proclaimed it. They were exceedingly astonished, and they said, "He has done all things well. He makes the deaf hear and the mute speak."
The Gospel of the Lord.
A very penetrating question, which evokes some sort of sincere consideration, is, how do I define success in this life? If we are completely honest with ourselves with this question, our answer should reveal something of our own entire philosophy of life. Now, I grew up in the Midwest, out in the pastures of Indiana, and I think not a few folks out there would say that to have a decent farm with a picket fence, that the crops should thrive, to provide for the family, that would be success. Now, if we'd ask like Gordon Gekko on the movie Wall Street or any high roller on the TV show Mad Men, I think we'd get a very different answer. Something like to have a bank account that would make anyone's jaw drop, or to have a high-rise apartment, or to have a gorgeous babe on my hip. Now that's success. Now, I doubt either of those two pictures of success exactly line up with your definition of success. But no matter your definition of ultimate success, it seems that we have been trained from an early age to have short-term goals and long-term goals to achieve that ultimate goal. And rightfully so. There's no way I would have been a quarterback in high school and in college had I not set short-term goals at every off-season. There's no way I would have decent grades in the seminary had I not set different goals and different deadlines to complete each assignment. But again, all those goals we set for ourselves very much depend upon our own conception of success. I bring this topic up because in the crowd in today's gospel, the crowd gives Jesus the ultimate compliment because they say, "He has done all things well." These people had seen our Lord do some amazing things. He had made their hearts burn within them with his preaching. He had raised a young girl to life. He had walked on water. He had fed a huge crowd with just a few loaves and a few fish. In the passage we just heard, he was presented with a deaf man who had a speech impediment. Our Lord put his finger into the man's ears, touched his tongue with his spit, looked up to heaven, sighed, and said in Aramaic, "Be opened." The miracle was worked. Amazement seized them all. Even though Jesus told them not to say anything about the miracle, they couldn't help themselves. They were astounded beyond measure and cried out, "He has done all things well." That's one way of defining success, to do all things well. And the crowd has judged our Lord to be successful. Interestingly, after he receives this high praise from the crowd, for the next 2 or 3 chapters in the Gospel of Mark, Jesus is at pains to teach his apostles to adjust their conception of success. very soon after the healing of the deaf man occurs that we just heard, our Lord begins to keep his words and actions away from the limelight, and we read of his first prediction of his passion and death, which startles the apostles, especially Peter. Peter rebukes Jesus, and Jesus replies, "Get behind me, Satan." He teaches them that they must think as God does. If they wish to come after him, they must deny themselves, take up his cross, and follow him. For he who saves his own life will lose it, and whoever loses his life will save it. From the disciples' perspective, this is crazy talk. But then again, like we all concluded earlier, it all depends upon your conception of success. During our Lord's Passion and at the foot of the cross, the crowds apparently had changed their minds about Jesus and his success. At that point, they certainly did not think that he had done all things well. Rather, they thought he was a colossal failure, a criminal executed shamelessly, a so-called king who died not with a crown of gold, but a crown of thorns. Little did they know what would happen on Easter Sunday. Little could they fathom that with a small band of fishermen, tax collectors, and nobodies, they would be able to spread the gospel to the corners of the world. So certainly, Jesus Christ has put a wrench in our idea of what true success looks like. As Christians, we cannot merely take the world's standards of success as our own, because if we live today as Catholics, and as Catholics we truly believe that Jesus Christ, God made flesh, has indeed done all things well, then his life and his teachings should very much influence our goals and our aspirations. But does this mean that we should not strive for success in business, in our professions? Should we not strive for success in the athletic field? No, that's not what it means at all. In fact, I would argue that it makes our pursuit of excellence in all realms of our life all the more urgent. But as we have noted, our life's trajectory and our life's pursuits are all dependent upon our conception of success. So it's a matter of making sure that our idea of success is exposed to the light of grace, that we allow our ambitions and our goals to be elevated and even transformed by God's designs. The question, then, is how do I make sure that my goals are God's goals for me? How do I know that my idea of success is the same as God's idea of success for me? I think the healing in today's gospel can give us insight into that answer. The people beg Jesus to heal the deaf man, and what's the first thing that Jesus does? He takes him by himself away from the crowd. This is a crucial detail. Maybe this shows Jesus' humility, that he doesn't want to show off the miracle, but I think it's deeper than that. Spiritually, we are all deaf to some degree to the voice of God when we are caught up in the crowd, the hectic hustle and bustle of life. And other people's conceptions of success that we hear it all the time, and in so doing, we are deaf to God's idea of success. That's why Jesus makes the point to pull the deaf man aside to himself. And that's what he wants to do with each one of us, each and every day. If we spend all of our time out in the world without being pulled aside alone with Christ, the militant secularism that pervades our entertainment industry, our schools, our entire culture will not only influence and shape our life's goals, it'll even zap our faith away. We all spend a little too much time in the crowd of common opinion, I must admit for myself. It's in our prayerful solitude with Jesus, where we give him our full attention, secluded from all the distractions, diversions, and seductions of the crowd. It's then that we experience not only his tender mercy and his healing love, but we also experience the grace of divine light, which enlightens us to the ways of God, which allows us to judge our pursuits as worthy of God's will. Oftentimes, the divine light will convince us that some of our pursuits are self-serving and worldly, and that we should drop these goals. But other times, God will confirm us in our efforts and provide the grace that we might achieve these purposes. But it's a matter of spending time in prayer, letting Christ touch our ears with him, to hear him, touching our tongues to speak with him. It's then that he will clarify and strengthen us in our life of ours. Ultimately, ensuring that we make time for serious, silent prayer in our daily schedule will provide for us a daily reminder that heaven, our heavenly home, is our ultimate goal and the only worthy measuring stick of success. All other goals, worthy ones too, stand in the shadow of this great goal of our existence, our salvation. And all other goals that we have should measure up in that light of the ultimate goal of heaven. Today we have the opportunity to re-examine what it means to do all things well. I propose we allow our conceptions of success to be raised to the level of grace, that we submit our hopes and dreams to the expectations of God. Here at this Holy Mass, are not our ears touched by Christ in the Holy Word, the Scriptures? At this Holy Mass, are not our tongues touched by Christ in the Most Holy Eucharist? Let him work on you today. As Catholics, we can say with confidence that Jesus certainly has done all things well. With his guidance, his grace, I pray he will be able to say the same thing about us.